The other day, an old friend mentioned that she particularly likes the block design for piano and that she listens to the recording rather often. I think she likes the soothing quality of the music, which is never exactly predictable, but it's always climbing a little bit, never tilting right or left. All of that symmetry, that perfect balancing, comes from the mathematics I was using, which was new for me at that time when I was writing this piece in 2005. At that time, I was just discovering the phenomenon of mathematical combinations known as block design, and I composed the music very simply, taking the notes right out of the math book. This particular block design, called 4-12-6-10, has equal quantities of the 12 notes, using them always in subsets of 6, little arpeggios of 6 notes. I loved the symmetries I saw in those lists of numbers, so I just took them as they came, transforming them into notes directly from the numbers. I can explain more later, but first, let's just hear the first section of the piece. You will hear 11 6-note arpeggios, and at the same time, you can see a diagram and watch the 6-note arpeggios as we go down the list, with the notes numbered 0 through 11, the way mathematicians like to do it. Sometimes the notes are simultaneous, but I'll explain that later. The music is played by my old friend, John McAlpine, who recorded this on Wandelweiser. To show you where the notes came from, I'm going to page 79 of the Handbook of Combinatorial Design, which lists the 30 bass blocks. You just heard how one of those bass blocks rotated to make 11 of the arpeggios. That happens 29 more times to make the rest of the 30 sections, the 30 times 11 arpeggios. You can see the same thing on the cover of this score, but in MIDI numbers. Javier Ruiz, my copyist, transformed the mathematical lists into MIDI numbers where middle C equals 60, so that he could then feed the numbers directly into our Finale program and place them on musical staves automatically. That saved a lot of work, and it assured us that we would have the right notes in the right order. Most of the sections are like the ones we just saw, with the notes just 0 through 10. Note 11, the high note, is always present in other somewhat louder sections, such as this one. As you might expect, I was writing a lot of things on paper at the same time. Here's a sketch I found from 2005, where I even considered developing the piece as a duo between piano and vibraphone. That was a bad idea, because the vibraphone has too narrow a range, but the sketch is still interesting as supplementary information. Let's listen to a couple of more sections now that you know more about what's happening. As before, we're listening to the interpretation of John McAlpine, a pianist from New Zealand who has lived for many years in Cologne, Germany, and who recorded this along with several other of my compositions on the Wandelweiser label. The first section you will hear is one of the sections containing the high note in each chord. The second section is softer, with only 11 of the 12 notes. When you write music in this way, you don't want to change it in the numbers. If you think you know better than the computer what the notes should be, then you should just make everything up and not bother with the mathematics. You have to respect numbers. But the numbers don't determine which musical notes should be assigned to each number. They don't determine the rhythms or lots of other things. So quite a few decisions remain. The most important decision here was just to find a scale of 12 notes that fit the numbers 0 through 11 in a good way throughout the piece. I like symmetrical scales and soon determined that the best solution would be just to stack the 4 augmented chords in some order. But now another question remains. The scale is all major thirds and minor thirds, so why not play the notes simultaneously when they fall a major third apart? Major thirds always sound lovely, and more important, sometimes playing 2 notes at once produces some rhythmic activity. Instead of 6 attacks in every major, there can be just 5 or 4 or even 3. You can see all of that more clearly in this drawing, which shows one of the sections where the high note 11 is in each of the 6-note arpeggios. And the arpeggios are always climbing, like all throughout the piece. You hear this one starts on 0, on 1, 2, and then you find 3 here, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. There's another section starts here, 0, 1, 2, 3. And another section starts here, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So they're all climbing up, and they all contain note 11, and those are the sections that are a little louder than the ones that only have 11 of the 12 notes. I called that section Delay for Philippe de Crozat because he's an artist friend who has sometimes repeated visual formations with some delay, a bit like the delays of a synthesizer making in electronic music, and like the delays between one arpeggio and another here. Each one climbs up in a different way. I want you to hear much more of this piece, but first let me go back and summarize the math a bit. The formation is called 4-12-6-10, as I said. The 4 at the beginning goes with the 10 at the end, and that means that each 4-note combination occurs in 10 different blocks. I did a little diagram to show you how the first 3 4-note combinations connect to their 10 2-note additions. Here you see the arpeggios, the 6-note arpeggios that contain notes 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 4, 0, 1, 2, 5, and in each case they have to have 10 different pairs of other notes in order to make a 6-note arpeggio. But look how the other pairs come together. Here there's 3 that contain note 9, there's 3 that contain note 11, here there's 3 that contain note 10, and there's 2 that contain note 6 here, 2 with note 7, 2 with note 10, and there's 3 other branches of the tree in a similar form in every case. And there's always one pair that doesn't have anything to do with the other pairs, and I put him on the side. So you can see it's a similar formation. It's crazy, amazing how all the symmetries come together when you do a block design where everything has to balance according to the mathematical requirements. So each 4-note group appears 10 times, and at the same time, each 3-note combination can be found in 30 blocks. Each of the 66 2-note combinations occurs in 75 blocks, and each individual note comes in 165 blocks. I didn't count all that or check the numbers, but it's normal that if the 6-note groups balance out with all the notes in equal numbers, the smaller groups will also balance. The philosopher Gottfried Leibniz wrote a letter in 1742 to his friend Christian Goldbach, well known for the Goldbach conjecture, in which he said, "Music is hidden arithmetic, the mind being unconscious that it is counting." Many people seem to agree with this definition of music, as it is quoted very often, but I looked further into the writings of Leibniz and found quite a few related sentences that refer to music. So as we listen to the last minutes of block design for piano, some louder sections always containing the high note, I want to read you my English translation of some more Leibniz quotes. At the same time, we'll go back to the cover of the score and show the complete score in MIDI numbers. Leibniz says that the mind always does several things at once, and this implies that your mind can understand the spoken text, read the numbers, and appreciate the music all at the same time. Good luck. I've already shown more than once, wrote Leibniz, that the mind does many things without knowing how it does them, because it does so through confused perceptions in such large quantities that it is impossible to untangle everything. Our perceptions are never unified like a straight line. They are always confused combinations of perceptions, all wrapped up together. The perception confuses the individual events of the occult arithmetic. Listening to music, we perceive the consonances and dissonances of the hidden arithmetic. And when the beats are regular, we are pleased, having counted without being conscious of having counted. The mind does an infinite amount of little operations quite correctly, though unintentionally, knowing the result only by the end effect when it becomes a clear sensation. This clear sensation, however, is really a confusion, since it is a combination of different perceptions. The mind is not really reasoning, but simply perceiving the proportions, the synchronizations.